sermon this morning, I have a special. Do you have that pulled up, Miss Jenny? It's a song. If you want to jump on YouTube, it's by Southern Gospel Revival called By the Riverside. If you've never heard of that group, they're quite an amazing group. And I'll be singing along with them. We don't have to. Gracious God, we are so thankful to be in your house once again this morning. Lord, your awesomeness, your goodness, your graciousness, they are beyond any words that we have. Father, all we can say is thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Thank you for allowing us to be in your presence. Thank you for allowing your Son to tear that veil that was between us. Thank you for hearing our voice. Thank you for hearing our cries. thank you for loving us so much. Lord, as we dive into your message this morning, open our hearts and minds, help us to see and to know what we're supposed to. Help us to take it out into the world and share it with others. And Lord, this morning I pray every word from my mouth is yours and not mine. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
About 3 weeks ago, in my first class of the summer, we were learning about and discussing small membership churches. Which, if you look at the statistics of the Cumberland Presbyterian Church, and if you look at the statistics of all the churches in America, 50 to 60% of those churches are considered small membership churches. We are the majority of the church in America. My instructor, Dr. Crutchfield, asked me an extremely profound question. One that has been plaguing my mind ever since. And it is regarding our congregation. He asked, what is our purpose? What is the purpose of our church? Why are we here? And this morning I want to explore this idea with you more. So to start with, I want y'all to get comfy. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes. I want you to take just a couple moments this morning and answer the following questions to yourself. I don't want you to share your answer out loud, but I want you to think. My first question for you is, why are you here this morning? What is your purpose for being here? Are you here because you're supposed to be? Are you here because you want to be? Are you here because you want to worship God with others? Again, I don't need to know your answer, but I want you to think about your why. What is your purpose for being here? With your eyes still closed, the next question I want you to ponder: what is the purpose of Madisonville First Cumberland Presbyterian Church? Why is this church still here? What is the purpose of this church in the community? What is the purpose of the church in this community? Okay, you can open your eyes. Now, these questions may be tough for you to answer. Or maybe the answer came very quickly to you. Either way, as we continue this morning, I want you to keep thinking about these questions. Now, as a pastor, I hope that one of your first responses to why you were here this morning was to worship. I hope that was one of the first things that came to your mind, because worship should be our primary reason for being here. If you read in Ezekiel, he reminds us again and again that it is because of God being jealous for his holy name that he continually rescues his people. He wants us to glorify and to worship him. That is why the Israelites were rescued over and over and over again. It was because he wanted his name known among the nations. So he constantly came to the rescue of these people. Sunday morning is a time for us to gather together, to worship God, to give him the glory, the honor, and the praise that is due our God and King. If you think back several sermons this year, we have talked about the very beginning of the church, way back in Acts chapter 2. What we know about the beginning church is that people gathered together in each other's homes. They sang, they prayed, they fellowshipped, and they shared meals with one another. They learned and encouraged each other as they grew in their understanding of who Christ was and is and what that meant for them in their everyday life. We too, just like the beginning church, need to learn and encourage from each other and for each other. We too should be sharing Christ with one another. Now, as a body of believers, we do take moments every Sunday to share our praises, the amazing things that happened over the last week. I shared with you this morning that my daughter has come home. And that was because you all lifted me up in prayer, that you encouraged me, because many of you have been there. You have children of your own. You know how frustrating they can be. And it is because of that encouragement that I was able to go through what I have gone through, because I knew you were here and I could feel your prayers. We also share our prayer concerns when we lose loved ones, when people we care about are sick. We take the time to lift each other up and to encourage each other in prayer. We get a chance to praise together in both song and word. If you think about the words for the songs that we sang this morning, trust and obey. Together, we were learning what that means to trust and obey. All the words from the songs, the encouragement we receive. Learning from one another's lives, your experiences. Some of you can say, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. And when you share that with others, that helps others learn that they're not alone. But most importantly, Sunday morning is a time for us to remember that God should be at our center. That we should be looking to God in all things that we do and all things that we say. We should be asking for guidance, for direction, for understanding. We are to make our lives about living for God first. And because we know that all good things come from God, we should rejoice. And we do. We love to share those moments. We love to share those hilltop moments of how exciting it is, how awesome it is, but then we hit that valley and we're like, oh, God, what are you doing? Now, I have to be honest. Rejoicing with our awesomeness is a whole lot easier said than done. Because when we hit those valleys, we don't feel like rejoicing. We feel like complaining and whining and grumbling and lamenting. And it's part of our learning curve, and unfortunately, often we fall back into those selfish ways of it's all about me, it's all about me, it's all about me. Not it's all about God. It is an unfortunate part of our human nature. It overtakes us time and time again, just like it did the Israelites. You read through the Old Testament, the Israelites, woo-hoo! Yay, we're doing good. We love God. We love God. And all of a sudden, wham! They hit the bottom of the hill. And then they come back up. Oh, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I love God. And bam! Another bottom of the hill, right? We do the same thing. We're up and down, up and down, up and down. That is why it tells us to meditate on our word daily. As humans, we need a constant reminder of how amazing and awesome God truly is. If you look at most of the motivational speakers today, most of the life coaches, what do they tell you to do? Make little sticky notes. Make little note cards, right? If you're trying to change your eating habits, they tell you to plaster your refrigerator with sticky notes. Don't eat chocolate, don't eat chocolate, don't eat chocolate, don't eat chocolate. Stay away from the ice cream too. If you're trying to feel better about your body image, they tell you your bathroom mirror in the morning. Have it lined with sticky notes. You're beautiful, you're amazing, you're great just the way you are. Because we forget. We're humans and we forget. We have to have this constant reminding of who we are and whose we are and why we're here. That is how we grow. That is how we learn, by meditating constantly on the Word. When we gather together on Sunday morning, this is our time of giving to God the glory and the honor. It is also a time of fellowshipping with one another, sharing our prayers, reflecting on what's been going on in our lives, learning from each other, and loving one another. During our time of learning and growing, as we read the scriptures, we come to understand that part of our purpose is that we have work to do. Matthew chapter 9, verses 35 through 38, it says this. And Jesus went throughout all the cities and the villages, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Jesus tells us that we are to be laborers in the fields. Now, brothers and sisters, I want you to take a moment to look around you. Look around. There are empty places all over this church. I guarantee you right now that if you leave this building and you go downtown or even across the street, the parking lot's going to be full. Now, granted, some of those may have gone to an early service. Okay, I'll give them that. But I would dare say probably the majority of them have not. You're probably going to see people out mowing their yards this morning. Got their boat hooked up. They're heading to the lake. They're taking their kids bowling this afternoon. Maybe they're heading to the golf course this morning, etc., etc. Now look around you again to your neighbor. These are your fellow laborers. You only have to turn on the news channel this morning to know that we live in a sick, and a dying, destructive world. We live in a place where sin runs rampant. Truly, I tell you, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And while the harvest is indeed plentiful, and you and I are the laborers of our time, we have a responsibility. That responsibility is outlined in Matthew 28, verses 19 through 20. Jesus tells us, "Go, therefore, and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you." So another purpose for us is to teach others, to make disciples. Now, a disciple is defined as a person who is a student of. In this case, we're talking about Jesus Christ. But you and I must also be teachers. We also must be proclaimers. In order to teach ourselves, we must first be students. If you're not a student, you cannot teach. We have a great example of the student-teacher relationship recorded in Acts 8, verses 26 through 39. This is the story of Philip and the Ethiopian eunuch. Philip is led by the Spirit to a place where he's going to meet the eunuch. In verses 30 and 31, it says this. So Philip ran to him and heard him reading Isaiah the prophet and asked, "Do you understand what you are reading?" And he said, "How can I, unless someone guides me?" And he invited Philip to come up and sit with him. You see, Philip made the eunuch a disciple for Jesus by sharing his knowledge, his firsthand knowledge about Jesus Christ with him. When we gather in Sunday school, or if you attend an evening Bible study, or on Sunday mornings when we're in here, we are teaching and learning. We are teaching through the songs that we sing. We are teaching through the words that we say. We are learning about each other's shortcomings, each other's hurts, each other's whatever it happens to be, and we are lifting them up in prayer. We get opportunities to discuss our scriptures, what it means, and how it applies to our lives today. Now, answer me this. How many of you attended Sunday school as a child? Raise your hand. Okay. Would you have understood the scriptures without a teacher? No. Even as an adult, we still find some of the stuff we read in here difficult to understand. We have to be both learning and teaching, making disciples for Christ. So how do we know if we're going in the right direction with all this laboring? Matthew 12, 33 through 37. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad, for the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you speak good when you are evil? For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good person out of his good treasure brings forth good. The evil person out of his evil treasure brings forth evil. I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Are we personally producing good fruit or bad fruit? Is Madisonville First Cumberland Presbyterian Church producing good fruit or bad fruit? Are we honoring God with our hearts and our mouths? To answer these questions, we need to go back and reevaluate our purpose. What is our purpose? We are here to worship. First, God. We are here to labor with one another. We are here to make disciples. We are here to produce good fruits. And we can do this. It's not an impossible task. We have been given a guidebook, our GPS, if you will, that helps lead, guide, and direct us. As long as we're meditating daily, because we're awfully forgetful on God's goodness, grace, and mercy. John chapter 20, verses 30 and 31. It assures us that now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written, so that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name. We only need to read, believe, and share the gospel. Share the good news. Be a laborer in the field, sharing it with everyone you come in contact with, encouraging others, and focusing our lives on God. As we move forward as a church, I would like you to consider the direction that we need to take. Our direction should begin with a mission statement. And I would like your input from all of you as to your thoughts. As we leave today, I'm going to ask Miss Joyce if she would please hand out a slip of paper to each of you. If you want to do that, sure. As a congregation, I want you to take time to consider the purpose of this church and its place here in this community. Before you leave, please take a few moments and consider what you feel the purpose of Madisonville First Cumberland Presbyterian Church is. Please write it down on this slip of paper and either hand it in to myself or leave it on my desk. But please do that today before you leave. Today, I want to encourage you. Evaluate your reason for being here. Ask yourself, what is your purpose? What is the purpose of this congregation? As Marilyn comes up to close us in song, if you have not focused yourself on God, or if you are in need of encouraging prayer this morning, I invite you to please come forward as we sing.
Please stand, number 379, first and last verse. First and fifth, it looks like.
Praise
sisters, what is your purpose?